So then we are back with a more understanding on the time of the second tabernacle services that we find in the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Israelic lineage. So then we can understand the time of the end as per Mashiyach the prophet. We find a layer of understanding of the spring feast, the autumn feast, and also the returning of the cities of the Mashiyach laid waste for many centuries. So then, as we can understand the holy instructions as for what they are regarding then the 61st chapter of Mashiyach the prophet, we find then the Mashiyach completing the spring feast, and also we have learned previously after he's coming from the dead, he then spent an entire year with his people. So then, as we read then in Acts of Ruach HaKodesh, known as the Holy Spirit, then we find ourselves then reading further and understanding why the Mashiyach has spent 12 months with his people, because he was teaching them of his 1,000 years of rulership in the earth, as it was promised. Then when we read Revelation, we understand the 20th chapter where then the Mashiyach spent his 1,000 years while in this earth. Let's try to understand then the importance of Daniel, the 11th chapter. We understand then the 11th chapter as Daniel was not only a prophet, but he was a statesperson, he was a politician, and he explained then the importance of the kingdom of the north, kingdom of the east, and kingdom of the south, the Soviet Union, China, and Africa. Truly, the time for Africa has come. As we can understand, this year Mr. Xi from the kingdom of the east must make a deal with the Congo, where then the first cog or the first gear of Ezekiel, the first chapter, then is obviously engaged. We are at the moment in Daniel 11:4, and then when they make a deal, we are going to shift then for 11:5. Then the big machine of Ezekiel, the first chapter, then the synchronisms of many events then turns on. Let's try to understand also, besides this very important point, the tabernacling, or then the tent in a desert, where then the Hebrews, they had some sort of reflector, where then the priest would, prior of going in, he had then to face this reflection of this polished metal, so then he would find in himself that he was not dirty. There is obviously an understanding more important than only a priest observing himself, as if he could detect in himself anything wrong with his life. Certainly, the situation regarding reflection does not mean the metal polished, so then the priest would observe himself. The priest himself, he can observe himself because he can't detect sin or any wrong only by visualizing himself. The understanding of the reflection is related with the time of the end. As we understand, when you read the spring feast and the autumn feast, you understand as vengeance, even in a time where these people then were in the desert, and then Moshe was taught regarding then the time of the end. Moshe had the understanding similarly as the Mashiyach. He knew. Moshe knew of the time of the end. The Creator was his friend, and he was obviously part of it. He did not know every detail, such as later the relation with Leviathan and then submarines, for instance, or then Yohanan that saw this big star coming down from heaven, and he saw then obviously what then Zechariah the 5th chapter has stated, then galals coming from heaven as a star, as we can understand this earth is going to be destroyed by the hands of men. So with the same analogy, you understand then the star coming down from heaven and then destroying a couple of bombs. So then we can understand then this situation regarding then the reflection. What does that have to do with it? Moshe knew of the reflecting understanding of the prophecies. So then, at the end of the 1,000 years of the Mashiyach, Moshe had said, be sure when he comes, listen. So then, Moshe knew regarding then the law. He knew regarding the spring feast. He knew regarding the Mashiyach coming. And the reflection is related with the 1,000 years of the Mashiyach at the end of it. How can we understand this point? Extremely simple. At the end of the 1,000 years of the Mashiyach, these formations of war were practiced, except the completion of the autumn feast itself. So then, what is the reflection? As they were understanding this specific prophecy of the autumn feast, simply the reflection of the prophecy would be then reminded at the time of the autumn feast. So then, with this understanding in mind, what can we do other than study the holy instructions even further? Truly, profoundly, until we begin to understand then these nations regarding then the time of the restoration period started in 2010 until 2032 maximum, give or take a year. Then the importance of what Daniel has said regarding the prophecies of the time of the end. Firstly then, we understand Africa is a kingdom. When the Creator himself related the information with his prophet, he related the kingdom of the south as kingdom. And there was a relation of reflection. As it was during the time prior of the ending of the 1,000 years of the Mashiyach, so there was a similar situation as we can reflect this time of the end. During the time of the Mashiyach, when he came back from the dead, what went on? There was an unprecedented time of prosperity, because the Mashiyach was showing the world how the new world is going to be. And then prior to his ascension, he then laid down real heavy, because he had to show this world the time of the end. So then, as we understand this restoration period, regarding then the time of the end, is truly simply repeating itself. Thus the reflection. As we study this further, then we can understand how the formation of the war at the end of the 1,000 years of the Mashiyach, prior of the 1,000 years of Nahashatan, or then the deceit, where then you find the Mashiyach going to and fro in the earth with no tabernacling, makes absolutely no sense. It's nonsense. Thus then we find ourselves studying further what truly means tabernacling. As we understand, churches, they do not exist. What does exist is congregation. It's not the same as tabernacling. Thus then, prior of the ending of the 1,000 years of the Mashiyach, there were then the first, second, and third kingdoms. There was a war of Gog and Magog. So then these should then, for us, we should study further because the situation is repeating itself. As we read then these kingdoms, we know they already existed before. So then, these areas regarding then the time of the end were already practiced, because tabernacling has no timing. Let's try to understand. Tabernacling has no timing. Prior of the 1,000 years of the Mashiyach's ending was then Daniel. Tabernacling has no ending. So during Daniel's time, he was explaining the prophecies as during his time he was then explaining of those kingdoms. And we are simply repeating themselves as then the kingdom of the east, kingdom of the north, and kingdom of the south. So then Africa must prosper. They have no choice. The Creator has chosen them, and they are the kingdom of the south. So then, this year then Mr. Kabila is making a deal with Mr. Xi, and then Africa must prosper. The other nations simply, they do trade via computer, and then they line up themselves and wait for their turn. Much later, we're going to study then, again, Daniel the prophet. We're going to study also parts of the combat of the end. As we understand, we have 10 plus 8 years, roughly, until the time of the end or the closing of this age. So then, as the world is expecting then the new system, then the next 24 to 25 months we should obviously prepare our computers, because the world is going to change overnight. Then it is truly the trade time of the end. And as we understand, the freighters of the earth are going then to give the shots. We understand then, per Daniel, the designers, obviously, kingdom of the east, north, and south. As we are living in then the dragonic period, the time of precision, because Daniel had mentioned at the 1,000 years of the Mashiyach, at the end of it, knowledge would increase from a perspective of a trader. Daniel was a tradesperson. So then, as we prepare our computers then for this system, obviously nations should be concerned with infrastructure, ports and airports, because every person wants to have then the parcels. As the freighters then are preparing themselves for then the leadership, obviously comes first then a design coming from the kingdom of the east, north, and south, and then the freighters of the earth then simply they are in line with this understanding, so then harmony can be obtained for a time. Where we read then in Mashiyach, the 24th chapter, the Mashiyach, during his time of the 12 months he spent with his people, taking them by the hand, so to speak, he explained the time of the end. But he said, then the time is not yet. Much later, this prophecy also must come true. So then, we study this chapter of Mashiyach, the 24th chapter. We study then later Daniel, the 11th chapter, and also Ezekiel, the 38th chapter, and then Zechariah, the 5th chapter, and being more aware of tabernacling has no timing. Please stay tuned, much more coming up.